Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am said East Forest, and I am just actually getting back from the retreat we did, the East Forest retreat in Boulder, Utah, in southern Utah, in the Grand Staircase National Monument. And it was rad. Like, boy, what a good group of people. It's always, I'm going to speak more about it in the next upcoming podcast. We actually recorded a live podcast at the retreat, and I'm going to plan on putting that out next. And I did speak a bit about the retreat, so I don't want to double up on you. But because it's fresh in my mind, I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out. It's just so cool to see people come from all over the country and, get to resonate with a real human being about things that sometimes feels very singular when you're just doing things on your own in a studio or like this podcast alone. And there are even people there who are listening to the podcast. So thank you guys. It's just awesome to have, again, that face-to-face connection. So Rada and I had an awesome time just doing the yoga and doing the music and the hikes and this incredible food at the Sweetwater Kitchen there. The Boulder Mountain Guest Ranch. It was pure magic. So check out, there's some photos on social media. There's some East Forest tags, and I think it's, the other tag is like East Forest Retreat 2018 or something like that. But super rad photos. We had amazing weather, cool color in the leaves, the aspen trees. So if you're into that kind of thing, we do have another retreat coming up. And that's at the Esalen Institute, November 16th through 18th. So that's about, 6 weeks away if you're catching this on the day it was released. If you don't know what Esalen is, it's in Big Sur, California, and it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. It hugs the Pacific Ocean, the entire coastline there. Their grounds are just stunning. And you get to hang out in this hot spring water that funnels right out of the side of the cliff. And they built this bathhouse on the side of the cliff, maybe about 75 feet above the ocean. So the ocean waves are crashing below you, and you're looking at like whales and seals and all, what are those things called? Not penguins. Penguins? No. My brain is super foggy. Sea life, shall we say. It's just going to be a great time, though, because we get to dive deep into music and how music can be used as a tool to shift our consciousness, to propel us inside. And we'll explore this in many different ways. Rada will be at this as well. She'll be co-leading. And you'll get plenty of downtime to explore the hot springs and the grounds and the food. So check it out. It's at Esalen Institute, November 16th through 18th. And all the information for that is at eastforest.org. And then you go over to that retreat tab. Otherwise, I have one new gig that's very new, and it's coming up really fast, so I want to tell you. It's in Asheville. And I get little notes every now and then where you guys are asking, hey, you coming to Asheville? And I've heard great things. I heard it's like a mini Portland or something. And I've just never been able to come out because it's not really on a path that I'm on a lot. So I'm psyched. It's October 26th. That's coming right up. So if you know anybody there or you're in the area, please come or post about it. Invite your friends. It's going to be an East Forest ceremony concert, this new venture that I'm super psyched about. I got to do one at the retreat too. That's just merging concert, ritual, ceremony, and guiding you through more of an active, experience with the music. I'm also doing that in Colorado and Durango, October 8th. In Denver, October 10th, and Grand Junction, October 11th. So I got a few more things this fall doing the East Forest ceremony. All those are at eastforest.org. So today, I am bringing you a conversation I had with Jai Sugrim. And Jai is a friend of mine. How did we meet? I think we met at Mysteryland when I was playing at Mysteryland and in the U.S., and he's a yoga teacher and sort of men's health guy. This was actually recorded over 2 years ago, and he's expanded his offerings since then. And the obvious question is, why was this recorded 2 years ago? And That's because I was going to do this podcast a while ago, and I started to record conversations, but it never got off the ground because I think I was still trying to like figure out what I wanted it to be. And I had the interest in doing it, but the timing just wasn't quite right. So I did record a few conversations. This is one of them, and I've felt bad a little bit that I hadn't released it, and I wanted to. I just didn't have the podcast up and running. So here it is. Thanks, Jai, for your indelible patience. But Jai's someone that I went through this period of time where he and I kept running into each other at different parts of the planet. Like I remember I was in Berlin and I saw that he was there and we met up and I hung out with him, helped him buy a suit in the Mitte district. And then he was there doing a training at Jivamukti, teaching one, and he managed to finagle a gig. So we actually put on a totally full, sold-out gig at Jivamukti where I played music for one of his classes. And he's a very, very deep teacher. I remember he used to do, if I remember correctly, his adjustments are really deep, and he's a powerful, powerful presence and a beautiful soul. And then we kept, where else? We did I did this thing in New York City. We called it Urban Ceremony that Beth Weinstein helped me produce. And that was something we did at a multimedia space that's like 360 projection. And so we had all sorts of crazy projection going on that I'd play music to, and we did different events inside that over an entire weekend. We did things like I wore a brain sensing headset, and that affected the visuals. I like this stuff, just sort of messing around with technology and space and music and seeing what happens. So one of the things we did was a yoga class, and he led it, and that was super magical. And I'm forgetting things we've done. I know I actually can think of a few more events, but the bottom line is he's dope, and I like this conversation we got into. We did it actually at Jivamukti in New York City, but we were in this windowless room, and it was small. And like I said, I was just getting going in this whole podcast world, so I was trying a few things out, and I got to warn you in advance, the audio is not fantastic. Because of that little room, there was a lot of room reverb, but small room reverb, and I'm sure once your ear gets used to it, after a couple minutes, you'll be fine, listening to this. But I just want to say, I do know it's I try to make these as good as I can, but sometimes when I'm on location, on the fly, hey, you work with what you got, right? But the content of this, I really enjoy because he's got such an interesting life, and the stories he tells are good that I didn't want to get rid of it. I really didn't. So I did my best to clean it up. And thank you for having some consideration about that. But it's still worth it. Still worth it to get some time with Jai. So if you do have a chance to review the podcast, it's really easy to do. Thank you. You just scroll down somewhere. It's either on the page you're on now, or move back to where it says available shows. And you can go down there and give it 5 stars, or even better, just write a couple sentences saying what you enjoy about this podcast. I like to read those, and people out there, they like to see, your reviews really matter. People trust you on whether or not they should give a listen to this. And we're just trying to paint a story here together to give new ideas to myself, to you, to anyone else, to inspire each of us about ways to live well, ways to dive into spirit, ways to dive into our community, all the above. And we're doing it together. So I really very much appreciate your help. So let's just get into this, okay? This is Mr. Jai Sugrim. I'll catch you on the flip side. All right, Mr. Jai. So where are we?
We're at the Jivamukti Yoga Center in Union Square, New York City.
In a windowless room with a either faux tin ceiling or tin ceiling. So we were in an undisclosed location at a yoga studio.
Yeah.
We could be anywhere right now.
We're in the cave.
We could be underwater and I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for carving out the time to chit-chat.
Absolutely.
So we met, I guess we met at Mysteryland, right?
Yeah, we met at Mysteryland, put together by mutual friends.
And then we ran into each other in Berlin.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yes.
I'm just piecing this together for myself and how we ended up here. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. And when I was there, I got to know you a little better. I also got to hear a little bit about like your backstory. And then I was totally confused and like blown away. So, I mean, I know you told me a little bit about it already, but I have to just, before we even talk about anything, I think it's important that you just try to explain. It started with you being smuggled into the United, because you've come a long way.
I've come a long way. Before we get to that, I'd like to reverse back to how I connect to people. I'm gifted with tremendous amounts of experience and exposure. I haven't gone the conservative route in any way, which ties in a little bit to my background. In a way, I feel like I have nothing to lose. And I when people stick out, I sort of explore their mental framework to see if there's something I can learn from it. Or as I've gotten older and more experienced, it's more not just their mental framework, but the vibration they're holding. So somehow we were at Mysteryland, and I remember you were joking around about like, we didn't get around to it, but you asked me for a treatment because somehow you'd hooked into my vibration, and there's a level of trust to ask someone for that. And there was
I
a way.
I don't think I got it.
You didn't get it yet.
I still haven't got it.
You haven't gotten hands-on healing from me yet. We're going to get to that. But the fact that I hooked into the way we were in sync when you were performing, and you were performing, and it was just a perfect synergism between the yoga and the music and people having an experience that they walked away from.
Was that the one that went into the 5 rhythms kind of static dance?
Yeah,
it was like a 2-hour.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. And so naturally, when I saw on Facebook, of all places, that you were in Berlin, there was an opportunity to go and see what you were up to. And then maybe if there was spare time, it's all threaded totally cosmically. It's a series of intense mathematical equations that keep making it happen and circling back. And when things like that happen, I'm always intrigued. I do time travel. I look back and I look forward. And as a yoga teacher, I also sequence things. So I always see how things build. And there's a sense with certain people that there's a reason you keep intersecting.
Totally.
And so I think it's more like a creative wavelength. Like you're doing and you're saying something, and your medium's interesting, and the way people are connecting to it. So it's different forms. You're a communicator and I'm a communicator, which is why I connect to you. Like people get what you're doing.
There's like Ram Dass talks about, souls, you kind of have a dance to do or you don't. And if you don't, great. And if you do your dance. And then at some point you're done with the dance. You know, some of those dances are short. Some of them are quite long. But it's fun to think about, like, it's just another dance.
Yeah.
Between two souls.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a reason for birth. And some people are given this gift or certain abilities, or they maybe develop or tap abilities that we all have. But I've always felt like going big back to the backstory of my childhood. I, come from a third world country where my parents made some really powerful choices so that their kids could have more opportunity than they had. They knew if that we stayed in South America. My dad was a high-ranking military officer, but his kids wouldn't have as much opportunity in the world. So they made a move in some radical way. They conjured up some plan to get the family to the United States, which involved leaving us kids in South America with grandparents. My parents came here to work for themselves. And then we eventually came to Canada on visas, lived there illegally. And then the weird part of the story is how my dad's brothers, pretended like they were going on a camping trip across the border.
But you were in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
They were the other side of the country.
My parents were in New York.
You weren't just up in Toronto.
No. They're on the whole other side, all over the coast in another country. But they would smuggle us. We smuggled 4 kids. They smuggled in the cupboards of this camper across the border. And then one uncle took us to the airport and flew us to New York. And we finally saw our parents after a 2.5-year break.
Did they do Vancouver because they figured it was an easier border?
They figured it would work, yeah.
It's just like chiller.
It's chill.
Like, hey, it's the West Coast.
It's the West Coast, yeah.
Hey, anything in the car? Nah. No children up in our cupboard. That's a red flag.
That's a total red flag.
That's a weird thing.
One sneeze would have blown the whole act. I really pulled myself together.
How old were you?
I was just turning 10, like around before the age of 10 when that happened.
So I don't understand when or how you became a legal citizen.
A complex series of equations. My mother and father had to technically get divorced so that her father, who was sponsored, could sponsor her. Then we had to travel back to Guyana to do more paperwork and then come back. And at 18, I took the citizenship test. And, it's a lot of loopholes and risk taking. And you duck your head for a while as a kid and the fear of, getting caught when you don't have papers. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, you grow up like, a little scared for a little while before you get comfortable in your skin and not having to hide. But that backdrop is what I think propels me. I'm very radical for an Indian kid in the sense, like, when you're Indian, you've made it against all the odds. You're like, out of 1.5 billion people, you can now become a doctor, a lawyer, or a Wall Street type.
Which are the 3?
Which is what success is.
Of success.
Yeah, it's what your parents would want. I think it took me, I had 3 big paychecks in my life. One of which was when I worked with the Yankees and they won the World Series. Another time I made a TV show, and for 2 months' pay, I got a really fat check. And it took like 15 years of my life for my father to finally understand and respect that what I was doing is, in a way, success. It's not having like a real estate empire or, being a really great surgeon or something like that. He finally saw that there was a method to my madness and that what I was doing was pursuing a passion, which is not something I think, when you are in that situation and you come from such humble beginnings, I really respect him and his choices because he's had a much harder life. And it's something I've come to terms with. Before I turned 40, I wrote my dad a really nice, honest letter about how difficult he raised me in a really, really intensely disciplined environment, like a little soldier.
Your brothers and sisters too?
All of us, really strict. My little brother got off the most because I sort of broke him in. We all wore him down. My little brother was like the most spoiled and got like a really nice car in high school and a lot of privileges and could stay out all fucking night. And I was like, I could never even go to the prom, or I had to lie and say I had a basketball game just to go on a date with a girl. Like, it was really, really super, super strict. Yeah.
Why?
Insane.
It's just like the military stuff.
It's the military stuff, but as an adult, I was finally able to talk to my dad about it. And I didn't understand it as a kid because I judged him against American parents. For example, I had a cross-country meet, one of my first races. I was just getting used to long-distance running. I did really well for my first race. I contributed to the extent that my score counted towards our team winning a pretty big meet. We're a Class C school in upstate New York, and we won against some big Class A schools. And I remember my dad walking up to me, and the first thing he said, all the other parents were slapping kids on their kids I beat by like 50 places. Let's go out to lunch. This is great. And the first thing my dad says to me is like, why didn't you win? He just stops me. He's like, why didn't you win? And I was like, it blew my mind. And he said, I don't think I can take time off from work to come to one of these again. And like, that intensity is something I always resented in him as a kid until I was like 25 or 26. I never really forgave him for those kind of ways of treating me. Like, they were very harsh, and it was not what I was seeing American kids and their fathers. And so I didn't really understand growing up in this culture why he was this way. And for him, when I became an adult, I investigated his childhood and saw the amount of abuse he went in. I learned that my dad was a guy who came home, in a fight that he had lost, and his older brothers took him in the backyard, beat the shit out of him, sent him out, and said, "Don't come back home until you fuck that kid up." That's how they had to be the toughest, strongest, warrior type people to avoid being enslaved by the British, to be landowners, to be independent. They were like a really hardworking group of farmers who were able to work their way out of a third world country and to get their entire family to North America, between New York, Boston and Vancouver. That's where the family spread out. But they had to be the toughest of the toughest. And I started to really look at that. And through relatives and uncles and friends of the family, I was able to piece together his story. And as a man, I was able to be compassionate towards him, but also like draw the resources of the elements of that experience are what adds to my success. The idea that I have nothing to lose comes from that background, which makes me take enormous leaps and great risks that I think other people may not take. And I'm willing to really go for it. And his actual crazy level of discipline, which I hated, is so ingrained in me that if there's something that I want now, I can apply myself, whether it's like training for 3 New York City marathons. I can get up and do the training, whether it's transforming from a stiff marathon runner to an Ashtanga yoga expert in 10 years. I can focus and do what is required of anything I pursue to achieve success in it. Like in Ashtanga yoga, I was getting up at 4 a.m. for many years and going to bed at 9:30 at night. I can adapt to it. If there's a way to eat, I take on that way of eating for that thing. Yeah. So it's like a little crazy, but when you look backwards in time, you can piece together parts of the story that are useful to you, and you can let go of the parts, I think, that are not resourceful, or you can get a fuller picture.
Sure. Have you ever been able to stand outside of it and think of your father as this individual soul and say to yourself, hey, like, maybe, he's setting me up for this whole game. He's like taking one for the team. Obviously it's like a big, beautiful dance, but you know what I'm saying? Like, seeing him as an actor in a play, and almost like it's a sacrifice in a way.
It's a sacrifice. I actually, very recently, this past Father's Day, like a few days before Father's Day, it was so cosmically timed. I do public speaking and storytelling events, and I was invited on a panel to tell a story about the theme of which was breaking the rules. And I actually had crafted a whole nother story about some adventures I'd been through on India on a motorcycle trip, living on a motorcycle and driving through ancient India and crossing 12 states for over 3 months and just meeting really strange characters to ride with. And I realized a week before that this wasn't the real story I wanted to tell. And I actually crafted a story about my father and about his journey. And the story was timed like at the pivotal point of turning 40, and you reach the halfway point in your life. Like you and I were having dinner earlier, and we're talking about, well, what does 50 look like? Am I going to be having the energy for the things I'm putting into now? It's like, it's almost like every step we take now could be worth 3 or 4 later. We want to be in a different position. So it's naturally a very reflective time. And what I was able to look at with my father is to honestly see the beauty of what I got from him and to be compassionate towards what it means to be a man. Like, I don't think I could do what he did. I honestly wonder, I'm a guy, I'm wondering if I can even have one kid. He moved an entire family somehow through some enormous feat from another country, built homes with his hands, sold them, clothed and fed his 4 kids and gave us what we needed. I think it's an incredible achievement. So I let go of the hug I didn't get when I wanted it as a 13-year-old, or a slap on the back for doing well in sports, or the extreme discipline, but to take away what's good. And he is a crucial part of it. Like, he's still, to this day, I think my father is a giant. Like, I don't see any bigger. I've never met a more masculine man in my eyes. Honestly, to this day, like, the first thing I go home is like, you want to have a beer? He's like, I even have a little fear of my dad to this day. He's like almost 70, but he's so masculine and so tough a guy. Like, I don't know a tougher man as far as nerves of steel, risk-taking, work ethic. Like, I watch my dad get up 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 7 days a week, like the most unbelievable work ethic. And I think he is a hero in a way now, but we can't even talk about it. Like, I could never have it. To this day, I thought when I wrote that letter to him and he wrote me a nice text the next day, I thought, oh, wow, my dad and I are going to have really nice Father's Days, or we're going to go on hikes in the woods now that he's older, or we'll play some tennis together. None of it happens. It's just like, hey, welcome home. Let's have a beer. How's work? How's life? How's your business? And
sure.
I accept it, but he is an agent for me. Yeah.
So is he happy about your life now, or does he even ask so many questions about it?
He gets that he's not going to influence me in another way, and he respects the my notion of success, and it's taken him a long time. So he would prefer to see like a huge bank account, me living in a house instead of an apartment, maybe starting a family. I think he doesn't comment on it, but the fact that in our culture, having kids is a very masculine thing, and that's something I've held off on so far. And I don't know if it's something I'll ever get into, even though I've become more interested, because I feel I've evolved the family's DNA with the work I've done. The things that I believe we come into this world and we inherit certain things from our ancestors, and it's each person's work to perhaps purify these things. And I've done some of that work, so it would be interesting to see that pass on. But I don't believe I have the foundation for that yet. So,
yeah.
No, but I think the connection to our ancestors is a thing that's been severed for our generation of men. It's very, very difficult. There aren't rites of passage for men in our society today. We're not, our notions of masculinity are kind of skewed, or going out there and initiating yourself into what it is to be a warrior and to do your best. Those things we find them in zigzagged and sometimes after painful experiences, but there are cultures that teach their boys how to become men and
initiatory type things. We don't really have that.
Yeah, not today.
I mean, the bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah is a shell of what it really, I think, maybe was meant to be originally.
Yeah.
Well, for a lot of people, a psychedelic experience can be that in college. They kind of stumble into them sometimes.
Yeah.
Or unfortunately, like a near-death experience, but there's so much trauma to go around. It's one thing to say we need initiatory experiences for youth. It's another thing to recognize that we also need real elders.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of people are there to really teach anyway?
Yeah.
It's a different state of being. So I'm still just kind of confused. Like, he must have been excited about the fact that you worked with the Yankees, which frankly was a strange story in itself that even came to happen. Because he basically stumbled into that. And
yes.
I mean, it wasn't like you told me about a lot of guys who work in that organization. There's a huge hierarchy.
Yes.
It's very this is like the top of the show, and you don't just walk in and start working there, you know, and somehow you did. Mm-hmm. And in your 20s?
At a young age, yeah, about 26 and 27. So I spent 2 years with the Yankees. It's a very difficult. I was the youngest employee in all of Major League Baseball on a professional team, and if there are young people listening to this, what I can say looking back, at the time I didn't know this. I was just going forwards. Life is funny that you look back and it makes sense perfectly, but going forwards, you have to live it. And what I would say to young people is having a super enthusiastic attitude where you are willing to be quiet, not ask for too much, and work really hard. That opens doors that are remarkable. People love that. In that organization, it would be easy to see if someone got that job and like started asking the guys to sign balls so they can make some extra income to sell them. Like, what I think helped me is it was a sequence set up from the universe, in the sense that it wasn't a job interview where they're like looking for someone, because I wouldn't have gotten it if they were actually looking for a therapist. It would have probably gone to a person who was 50 or 40 years old. But how it was is one thing parlayed into another. So a friend of mine who was another trainer got me this internship. He's like, we can't pay you. We'll give you $150 a day for, your rent and food, and we'll give you a car. Just come down to spring training, 6 weeks with the Yankees. You'll help the pitchers with your massage. You can help out with the athletic conditioning because you know all about that. And then, slowly, it took a few days for players to say, trust me, because I looked extremely young. They're like, what is this, college boy doing here? I can't trust him with my $15 million arm. Yeah. And then like one or two guys would try and get on the table, and they'd love the work. And then next thing I know, I come back to New York. The pitching staff asked George Steinbrenner, like, we need this kid for home games, let him come. And they're like, I talked to my other clients.
And you were living in New York.
Yeah. I was a New Yorker. So I'm like, and the crazy thing is I grew up as a New York Yankees fan. So I'm shitting myself and like that I pinch myself. Like, I've watched hundreds of games on TV. I've been to the stadium a handful of times, and I'm walking in the tunnel like, 6 hours before game time, every home game, going like, okay, I just worked on Mariano Rivera, and there he is out there in the ninth inning. I patch up Bernie Williams' hamstring injury. He gets on the field the next day. I'm a young guy who had posters of these guys and trading their baseball cards 10 years ago.
And this is at the peak of their success.
And this is the three-peat year. This is the year we're going to win 3 years in a row. I enter the picture on a three-peat year. It's just all like a big movie. And then I'm like on the bus with Derek Jeter. I'm at lunch with Chuck Knobloch. I'm like going to the movies with the pitching staff. And I still can't believe it. I'm in awe that I'm actually in this experience with the team of all the teams you could wind up with. Even the Mets wouldn't be that spectacular. It'd be still cool.
It's such a New York comment. Like, I'm not even a baseball fan. And like, I know how crazy that team was because, everyone just, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of money and the amount of talent. Everyone was angry how good they were.
Yeah.
It was just like, it's not fair.
Yeah. And they have so many Hall of Famers on one squad is a remarkable experience to be around. Like, the level of excellence I'm used to associating with and working with, like, I understand the mechanism of succeeding at a thing. There's a structure to success. There's a way and a habit that people who excel, like Jorge Posada, the catcher on the team, told me, I'm not the best for this. He goes, there's 2 or 3 guys that are more talented that come to spring training. He goes, no single person that comes here will outwork me for my job. And he makes $6 million a year to catch the baseball. But he says, no one will outwork me for this position. There are structures and internal elements beyond just talent. There's so many guys that come with talent who don't make the team, who get sent back down to the minors because they're not ready yet. But then the guys who train a certain way, who think in a certain way, like Mariano Rivera told me, he's like, I said, dude, how do you throw your best stuff? It gets hit out of the park as a home run. What do you do next? You only come on when the game's on the line. Like, they pay you $11 million to come. If we're ahead by 3 or 4 runs, you have the day off. You never pitch. But you're only going to come in when it's like a 1-run thing, lead, and we have to get 3 outs. That's your position. And he's like, I asked him how, and now I wasn't teaching yoga then, but he's a high level yogi. When I look back at the way his inner structure experiences, he told me, he said a funny statement that I couldn't understand exactly then. He just looked at me and said, ice water in your veins. I was like, ice water in your veins? What do you mean? He goes, I throw heat, it gets hit I clear my mind and I throw strikes again. He goes, ice water in your veins. He goes, then I don't hear the crowd. Like there's 57,000 screaming people. He can't hear it. He's seeing his focus is so strong that he can see where he has to place the ball. And the game's now tied. It's on the line. And he still has to throw strikes so that we can win. And so learning these things at a young age, I think, has helped me apply them to other things. I've been around successful filmmakers. Martin Scorsese has been a client of mine for 12 years. I see how he approaches creating a movie, the amount of research he does, the type of team he has to have around me, the way he approaches editing, the way he shoots things. Like he's a complete workhorse. It's the passion. Like these people I've been around, they have a reason for getting up and just taking a big breath of air. Their reason for being alive is beyond what an average person. They have something to give. They have a passion that's inside of them, that's mechanistic. It's like a gear turning inside of them, which is something I connect to. And I've been able to find that inside of me with the work I'm doing with kids and the places I want to see yoga leave just the expensive retreat center, which is what I've been used to teaching celebrities, teaching filmmakers, working with professional athletes. Well, what about guys that are in prison who need to rehabilitate their mind? What about little kids that are violent or have broken the law? Like, wouldn't that be interesting? Or the way cops have anger management issues. What if this stuff gets to them? This is my mechanistic drive. Like I have had so much worldly experience. I've been out there. I've gotten a World Series ring. I've been to the red carpet with Martin Scorsese for all of his films in the last 12 years. I've traveled around the world to exotic locations. It's like, okay, I got my quench for worldly experience. It can never be stopped. It can never be fulfilled. It can keep going. But what thrills me is like seeing kids sit still for 2 minutes in the middle of the day at the end of the yoga sequence, watching them sit completely still. I get the impact of that work is more of, that's a thrill, like another World Series ring or part of another film thing or, being on another beautiful beach, teaching yoga. It's okay, but it's not as, like just recently getting the call from the local police department in Bushwick to teach yoga and mindfulness and to potentially start an ongoing program with them. That kind of stuff is what drives me completely wild right now.
Right. Seems like it has some real world impact.
Yeah.
It's sort of a legacy thing too.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you were able to be a fly on the wall. Not really. You weren't a fly.
I had the curtain pulled back.
You got the interview. You could say you got to see behind the curtain on many different modalities and people.
Yeah.
And see them as people.
Yes.
And really see about what is it that makes this person who they are. Yeah. And I want to ask you about the other side of the coin though too, because it's one thing to see the amazing things certain people are able to pull off, but at what cost? Do you also meet some of these people that you admire their balance as people, or is there kind of sort of an insanity to it?
It's an amazing, amazing, amazing question, which thrills me. I have trained the people on the Forbes 400. I've walked into apartments where the kids are playing soccer in the living room. Okay, I've been in Harrison Ford's apartment. Like I've seen it all, and there's so few people that I would trade places with. I feel like I've lived the most luxurious life of any of them.
Isn't it amazing that like, some of the people that I would think that I admire in that way as full, complete people, nobody knows about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it makes me wonder if it'll make me because I guess I've been facing some of these thoughts myself, and you just start to wonder about what is my real work?
Yeah.
Is what I'm doing distracting me from my real work, which may be like, how do you have desire and how can you do just desireless promotion?
How can you do what?
Desireless promotion.
Desireless promotion
Of yourself, of you, your brand, your product. Is it possible? How do you ride that line between peace and your inner work?
Yeah.
And trying to take over the world like these people are. You really think about it. I mean,
they are.
There's a drive there. That's what I'm
Yes.
talking about. And drive essentially is just an intense desire.
Yes.
And usually that desire is something unrequited, and that's why that's the fire that feeds
You're
it.
about to get into the core of who I am so easily. You're about to blast me open right now, because this is the depth of who I am. So back to these super successful people. When persons are motivated by greed only, by selfish desire, it's super limited. The person will get to a point where they've made the Forbes 400. The next step I've seen the Wall Street people do is to start to consider politics, because then the money they've acquired can buy anything, and which starts to lose its thrill. But then they start to become interested in really shaking and moving things in terms of policy. So,
well, don't allow those guys not to get distracted with Wall Street, but they buy policy with their money anyway. Why would I bother with politics? I can have my hookers and Coke and not have anyone looking down.
It's about, basically, we're going to boil it down to this. The level of influence I've been around is incredible. It's the people who shape the world. When a person is, what I saw from a very young age, which influenced me heavily, like, I always, luckily, somehow, my childhood was so miserable that I was determined to only do things I like. Thank you, Dad. That was a gift that he was so strict. And I'm like, no way am I getting out of college and pursuing something that's more in a cubicle or that I'm sacrificing for the future. I'm going to do only stuff I like now, which has been lucky. And so when I saw these people motivated by selfish desire, none of it was fulfilling. Because remember, I'm seeing them in a position that not even their shrink is seeing.
Yeah.
They're raw. They're honest with me. I see how unfulfilled their relationships are. I've seen grown men that don't know anything about their kids, that they're raised by nannies and other people buy their birthday presents for them. And the mom would say, that kid can play basketball, but the brother is the smart one, so he's not allowed to play. He's got to hang out with tutors all day. And they're shaping their lives at 11 years old. I've seen all of that. So I've boiled it down to, when you're motivated by if your desires are just for yourself or to accumulate for yourself, it's a complete trap. You're going to burn out. Nothing you buy, nothing you achieve, any power you think you have over someone else is going to undermine you. It's going to end. It's going to go nowhere. Martin Scorsese is a character that I have such artistic respect. There are artists, and this is why
Did he let you touch him? Because I know he won't shake hands.
I stretch him twice every session.
He lets you touch him?
10 minutes, of course.
So you get to touch Martin Scorsese.
Shut the fuck up.
No one can touch that man.
He's amazing.
Literally.
He's got the wire to the above. And so it was through vibration, like your means is music. And so that connection, that respect is, artists are great receivers of information. It's not something they're creating with the tools they're given in this lifetime. It's just that they're able to, a part of it is a big channel. And so people that are involved in that creative process, or like if a ball player on the team is only into womanizing, making their salary, they're very uninteresting. But there's a ball player on the team who's a history buff and solves the New York Times crossword puzzle in 20 minutes and is involved in charity and is sort of outside of a limited, isolated sphere. For me, with the talent I had, I knew I could do anything I wanted to do, but I never, ever saw that living out my life in some corner comfortably as success. I always felt bigger than that. Like I've always had the opportunity of a basic 6-figure job, a woman and kids, and going on in society. I somehow in my heart that always felt like I would be falling short. Not that being with a partner is falling short, but that my work is much greater. I see myself as someone who's been equipped with the tools for influence. Like the universe would not have given me these experiences if they weren't to shape me in a certain way. For me to rub elbows with the people on the Forbes 400, Martin Scorsese, the New York Yankees, is to get a window into things, to use that for something, which is back to when you're talking about like legacy and what we're leaving, like those things that really thrill me is like none of us are happy with the world. None of us are. Nobody's really, if anyone travels this planet.
If you are, you're not paying attention.
Yeah. If you go around this planet and you have a passport and you see people dump stuff right into the river and the oceans, and you realize that,
brother, you don't need a passport to see that.
I mean, it's everywhere that we're not happy. But for me, I choose to see it as we're in some sort of birth canal. We're in a birth where things have to get bloody and messy, and we have to be suffering and struggling and poisoning the air. But I believe the only thing that separates us is ignorance. The only thing that separates us, and that's what music does. Music, if we are at a performance and through vibration, we transcend linear thought. We can all hook into some sort of unified field through sound, through vibration. And what musicians do, I have great reverence for, because that's how I tap into some of the deeper spaces within myself. And for me, the gift, the greatest thing I've done for myself and for anyone who wants to go deep is solitude. And it comes in the form of, some people are attracted to Vipassana meditation training. Some people go to the jungle to do retreats. Some people sit, at an ashram. But we as a society have become uncomfortable in our own skin. We're looking outside of ourselves for the next thing to buy, the next diet, the next workout. When we learn to...
Pull that thing a little closer, the whole thing, the entire...
Yeah, when we learn to dig into ourselves, when we learn to sit still, and we take on internal practices. Mm-hmm. For me, I had a crash personally. I was making $250 an hour all day long. I had a wait list, living in a sick apartment outside of Central Park, and getting huge bonuses from my rich and famous clients, and getting time off and traveling with some of them. I crashed in 2007.
Just with the economy.
With the economy. It's that kind of thing tied into the there's so much endless money, and it's all in New York, and I'm one of those servants of the wealthy benefiting off of it. And so I went to India, and one of the things I saw, I was invited by a friend who had just finished medical school, another Indian, doing what all Indians do. And his father took us to India. But one of the things that impressed me was the sincerity of people who didn't have much. They were very simple village people, but they could smile. And
sure.
It impacted me so much. I came home and immediately looked in the mirror, and I saw the layers. I stared at my own eyes for 20 straight minutes, and I saw the muscles I'd added to my body. I saw the things I'd bought. I saw the 40 pairs of diesel jeans and shit that I didn't need piling up in my place. I saw the huge apartment and the 2 bathrooms, and I started to give everything away. I slowly gave away a lot of my possessions. And that was the start of a very big phase that took a few years of renunciation, of moving away from the world and beginning to explore solitude, sacred places and sites and temples, and becoming more reflective. And that was another extreme, and I think I've balanced it out. Now I'm balancing out and finding a middle of how I want to live in the world. How many possessions do I want to have? And
how many?
Well, probably three tailored suits would be nice.
Have you seen that guy's blog? And he has I don't know, it's 51 possessions. I mean, that was it, period.
No, I'd like to check that out. Yeah. I get freaked out when I start accumulating too much. I just took a bunch of shit at the thrift store today. So it does get heavy, the amount of things you own.
But you did hit it on the nail for me too, this idea of solitude as a teacher, and merging and working with solitude to understand your sense of self amongst the larger self. So it's kind of using solitude to break through solitude.
Yeah.
But that's what I got turned on to with my music too. And I was also in New York. I had a nice life going, but I also started to see through that through different experiences. And that's when things weren't quite, same time, man, actually. It was right around 2008.
Yeah.
And that's when things were crumbling, and I started.
There was a lot of fear in New York then for everyone. Tons of fear.
Yeah. And I the East Forest thing wasn't East Forest, but I was making music for myself to meditate and journey with. And the first record that I made, I didn't even know I was making a record, but I did it for me on the side.
Yeah.
And it was a personal, it was a tool. And that really changed my life when I finished that. And for years, I was just doing this stuff super underground, all as a gift. And and there's something about that. I don't know. I see that renunciation as part of the process, but then coming back and trying to think, well, how can I integrate this so it's not just about me and my process? Like, how can I share this? And I had a lot of those experiences in wilderness locations, which is about solitude. Yeah. And it's about places on this planet that are still wild, which really just is a word that means it just is. Yeah. It is as it is, and it always is. And I captured that. I thought, well, if I can record some of this, that's something I can bring back. Something. And as soon as I mixed it into music, it was so magical. And it's like, oh, I can now share this with other people and give them a taste of this same energy, this same thing. And I just was thinking of that when you're talking about how you were thinking about solitude as it was attractive to you in one or another. I want to at the height of your
completely. It is the greatest gift and the greatest journey, the greatest reward. It's like going, I want to ask you something about this too, but because it's a connection that I feel we share, that understanding. I think there's in Sanskrit, it's very interesting. There's no word in Sanskrit for spiritual. And in this country, we're caught up in, it's a spiritual thing, or it's a spiritual music, or it's a spiritual yoga class, and he teaches with a spiritual vibe. We get caught up in that. And in Sanskrit, the word that comes the closest is adhyatmic, or adhyatma sadhana, and it's the idea of studying yourself. And the point why anyone would take on disciplines, like they never let a man study Kabbalah before he was 40. That's a recent modern development. It was thought some of the concepts would drive you completely insane. But the beauty of self-study and self-discipline is that there is an infinite amount of wisdom and power already within us. The issue with our lives, in which I saw myself get caught up into prior to 2007 with that success and rubbing elbows with successful people, is there's so much confusion in our society. Everybody's confused. That's why you can't even blame your parents for anything, because they were even more confused than you were. And so solitude is just getting in touch. It's stopping the noise, the mental noise, to get in touch. Yeah. So you can receive music or receive an idea.
False leaders, in a way.
Yeah.
In the sense of like everyone's offering some answer.
And the answer is you have to find out for yourself. And the way to find out for yourself is like nature. I saw animals in the jungle of Peru that I have never seen on the internet or in books.
It's like the answer is there is no answer. It's like
yeah, it's like you gotta do you, and doing you is that intimacy, and it's something we're not taught to take care of ourselves. And solitude is a part of taking care of the most important thing, which is your own mind, your instrument of perception. It's the user's manual for your brain. Learn to get comfortable with it. And the practices I'm teaching, whether it's in a yoga class, a meditation retreat, it's with kids or cops, is to just hit the pause button. It's like the mat is time for you. It's a play space. It's a little laboratory. See what you fear. Let it come up. Breathe into it. Go to the edge a few times a week. Look over the edge. You don't have to jump off the cliff, but look into those things. Like for a lot of us, it's scary to stop. We don't want to stop. And so I invite...
Yeah, man. I had a buddy who went to acupuncture, and he sit on the table, and I think it was 20 minutes they left him, and it was so excruciating. The time of boredom, is how he described it. Like, he was dead serious. He could never go back.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't see that as a problem.
Yeah.
he's just like, well, I won't go back to acupuncture.
Yeah.
No problem.
That at this point, you know, a man can take 40 years, 20 years, 60, 80, 90 years to realize. I believe the true spiritual journey begins when a being can stand up and honestly say, nothing outside of me. This is a deep truth. If we can come to it honestly, that nothing outside of ourselves, no matter how much sex we have, how many women we sleep with, how much money we earn, how many great foods we eat, places we go to, power we get. When you realize that those things are temporary and they won't fulfill you, your journey begins. Solitude is the beginning of that realization. And great teachers provide safer structures for students to begin to get into that. But it's ultimately going to be done alone. You're going to go into the jungle alone. You're going to go on retreat alone. You're going to do your own meditation practice in your own home. Even if it takes 10 or 20 years, there's going to be a point where going inside of yourself becomes a higher desire. Like, I protect the start of my days. Like, I have to get up. Before I turn on my phone, I absolutely make sure I clean my body, and then I clean my mind. I sit for 20 minutes. I'm increasing my discipline at night because that's where the weakness is. At night, I can get into emails, which sucks me into a little social media posting or distraction on a YouTube movie I want to watch. That's an area where, you know, I can work on. But the fact is that there's a part of each day dedicated to trying to quiet my mind. And that in that quiet, I can find center. Now, what's in that center is an incredible wisdom and intuition. I get ideas from that place that are incredible. I get peace of mind from that place that I would not access from any drug that I could take. So I think
not to diss drugs.
Not to diss drugs, you know, there's some people give drugs a bad name, and I think, you know, some people
flowing through our veins
understand how to.
Right now,
we manufacture more drugs than in any drugstore in New York City right now every night. So no, but to share that's what I get up for. That's why I don't need that much money. You joked about Karina, you know, wanting to walk the dog and take a hike. And there's a part of me that has seen that the Central Park West apartment owning the whole floor of the building, it's okay. But at the end of the day, are you happy? Like, I can be happy leading a simple life. I'm on fire to see schools have yoga. If I can see more schools have yoga, I'll wake up and work my ass off for the next 10 years to see every high school in the US offer it as an elective. Like that's like the guys who on Wall Street are working to take home $1 billion a year. That's the kind of insane drive. I would give an arm of my body to see that happen.
It's got to be more satisfying when what you're desiring essentially is a gift, something that will continue giving. You know, earning $1 billion, unless you're just thinking you're going to be a philanthropist, which most isn't their first thought until it becomes a tax break. Yeah, I think it provides an added level of satisfaction. So maybe that's part of the answer when I was asking, how do you have desireless promotion? Perhaps as if you focus on what you're promoting being a gift.
It's for me. I came out of the jungle after a 26-day retreat in 2013, and I got a really nasty parasite. I watched parts of my body rot and decay. And I was forced to live my teaching of non-attachment. We're not the body. I had to fully and really embrace it. And this disease, leishmaniasis, a flesh-eating parasite, spread to other parts of my body, the inside of my face and throat. And if it wasn't treated in time, luckily the CDC got on the case, took care of it, I would not be here. And that that experience was very humbling. It makes you get in touch with what is your reason? Is it more accumulation of things and money, which is there really any security? Does any one of us know if we're going to be here tomorrow? We think there is, but we never know when is our last day. And where is the body? If you honestly look at it, where is the body going? Each day the body is walking closer to the grave. And it's kind of it could be a negative way of looking at it. It's an extremely empowering way of looking at it, which
totally
is
with you.
why, like, seeing kids, like, to be honest with you, there's someone I grew up with very close who's doing a life sentence and will never see the light of day ever again for doing some horrible crimes.
How old?
Horrible crimes.
Oh.
This person is 39 years old now, and they will never come out and see daylight. When I work with kids with anger issues, and I work with kids that are violent offenders, and I see this work, it's not like I'm not giving them anything. I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about spirituality. I never call what I do meditation. But they're having a structure to where they come back to me and tell me, Mr. S, I'm sleeping a little better. Or I used to get pissed off at my mom every day. Now she doesn't faze me. Or I see them applying their ideas to what they want to do after high school, like really industrious, interesting things. One kid's like trying to create a new kind of inline skate. One's a rapper and he's working on his music. And they're applying the work we do, which is based in yoga and mindfulness, to learning to deal resourcefully with anger, to learn to better, maybe I'm going to influence a kid's timeline in a way that without this work, they wouldn't have the resource and space in their minds to make better choices. Maybe they would rely more on their anger or respond with their anger first. So for me, using my life in that way, and if I can accumulate enough to have a nice home, peacefully, a place where I can meditate by the forest, I'll be really psyched. But
well, it sounds like a better use of your time than rubbing Derek Jader's hamstrings.
I mean, that's fun.
I mean,
when
all
you're
due
young.
respect.
Yeah.
That was a fun trip.
Yeah, but
Did
actually that
dance?
stuff creates the leverage for me to do what I do now. Like
No
it
doubt.
helped me get into the police
But
department.
let it be said that the rewarding, how satisfying is it at the end of the day, after the years pass?
Yeah.
I don't think you wake up and every morning you're just like, wow, rubbing that dude's calves.
No.
It.
I do look at the World Series ring and go, oh my, once in a while. It's not something I look at. It's like, it's a treat. Like I'm a jock. I play everything with a fucking ball. I still run. I do crazy 2 hours of yoga every day. So I look at that and I'm like, there's athletes that went their whole career and never got this. I was part of the team and they somehow voted me on it. So I'm, that's like a little bit of a personal wowee, even to this day, from being a guy who traded baseball cards to having the ring with my name and the Twin Towers on it and the subway cars on it. It's a total New York thing.
Well, it's an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And I know there's more to it. And we should probably close this, but we could do it again sometime and continue this, because I know a little more about you too. There's more crazy stories, man. It is so insane.
Yeah.
It's so insane.
Yeah, for sure. So it's been really good talking to you, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Do you have websites or anything like that? I'll put it in show notes, but you can talk about anything you have.
People can learn more about me at jaisugrim.com, jaisugrim.com. I speak on health and wellness. I teach mindfulness. I teach yoga. I love to work with kids. I'm getting involved with work with police officers. But anywhere that these mindfulness practices, the practices of solitude and self-care can be used, if I get the call and I feel like it'll be helpful to people, I usually go.
Yeah, and you've got a lot in the cooker, I know. I mean, by the time this comes out, who knows what you'll be up to. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Thanks. It's been good collaborating with you. Let's see what happens down the line.
And we will. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jai. Thanks for giving me that time. And because it was so long ago, I'd definitely like to have him back on and do it proper, because he's an animated dude. I was remembering that when we were in Berlin, I was sitting at a table outside. It was a beautiful day. And I was with this yoga teacher named Kai. He owns a studio there. And Jai met up with us and he was telling us a story. And I remember he got so animated. He stood up because he had to he had energy in his body. He had to tell the story with his whole body. And I love that. I love people who just are in it and in it in a really genuine way. So hopefully we'll do it again. Thanks, Jai. This music you are hearing in the background is called Deep Pond, and it is from my first record, The Education of the Individual Soul. You can check that out wherever you listen to music. So I hope to see you in Asheville, October 26th, or in Colorado in the second week of October, or at Esalen the weekend before Thanksgiving. Check it all out, eastforest.org. Thank you so much for listening. Please do say hi. You can always do that at info@eastforest.org. Tell me what you think of the podcast. Keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit. But if you do it with grace, folks. You do it with grace.